On News Bike Heaven this week, we'll meet Lorraine Kerr, who's looking for a trail bike. There'll be another used bike test, some workshop tips from Gary, and more advice on the used bike market.
Well, welcome to this week's show, and with me is Lorraine. Now, Lorraine, you have a BMW 1100
Yes.
at the moment, so you want to stick with the traily kind of bikes, don't you? Why,
Yes.
why do you want to swap?
Well, my bike I have is relatively old. It's a 94 model.
Right.
And I feel it's now time to upgrade and try out the new ones that we have.
Right, but you like this style of bike?
Yes, it's ideal for a tall person, long
Right.
legs.
Yes, because
it's
you are very
comfortable.
tall, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what's your budget?
Well, I'm willing to go from 4,000 to 6,000.
Good, because
Give or
we're
take.
right in the
Yeah.
middle there. Yes, that's fine. So what do you use your bike for?
Basically, I use it more for pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Just in Scotland with
Yeah.
all the good roads that we have there.
Fabulous.
Yeah, so
Yeah, right. Okay, well today we have the Transalp, which is the cheapest of the bikes. That's £4,000, so we're in your budget there. We've got the Aprilia, which is 4.5, so that's right bang in the middle. And stretching the budget to its limit is the Bmw Gs 650, which is a lovely bike, but that is a 2002 model. So, you know, what do you think to the look of these?
the Transalp, nicely put together. The seat's quite low. Would be comfortable for me to ride with
Yeah.
the upright position. The grips and that look far enough out for me.
Yeah?
Yep, looks a nice tidy bike.
Yeah, good. And the Aprilia Caponord 1000cc, what do you think to this?
Yeah, it's a lovely looking bike. Big, nice big sort of
Yeah.
bike. Slightly unusual design on it.
Yeah.
Looks as if it'd be a good riding position.
I mean, obviously it's a 1000cc, so it's going to be not dissimilar to yours. Whereas these two, it may be quite interesting to see what you think with them being a smaller engine. And the BMW, my personal favourite.
Yes. Well, yeah, I really do enjoy the look of that bike.
Yeah.
Nice high riding position again. I think that is the highest between the three bikes.
Yeah. It looks quite compact though, doesn't it? It looks quite sleek
It
and
does.
slimline.
It does. And the colour black, that really does seem
Yeah.
to set it off.
Yeah.
Again,
absolutely.
the handlebars nice and wide, which will be effective for the way you're riding. Yeah, looks like a nice ride.
So you're happy with our selection for you
Yes,
then?
I am. Yes.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to set you off on the Transalp.
Right.
But before we do that, we're going to go to Richard, who's going to have some facts and figures for you.
Okay.
Okay, Lorraine, this is Honda's Transalp, which seems to have been around forever. It was first introduced in 1987 and remained virtually unchanged until January of 2000, when it was given an extra 50cc, taking it up to a 650. It has the off-road styling which you're looking for, but as with most big trailers, it doesn't exactly have a great deal of genuine off-road ability. But don't let that put you off. It's still a highly respected machine with a healthy following. This week we're offering you this year 2000 bike on an X-Plate which has covered just 5,900 miles and has the bonus of heated grips and a colour-matched top box for just £4,000. If the 650 Transalp sounds a little underpowered, then you can climb aboard Aprilia's monstrous Caponord with its 1000 cc's of V-twin power. This machine was introduced as recently as February of 2001, so you're not likely to bump into too many other Caponords on those Scottish Highland roads. It is physically a big bike, but it's some 30 kilos lighter than your own 1100 GS, so you should find it quite manageable. This example is on a Y plate, it's showing just over 6,000 miles and it's yours for £4,500. And finally, we thought you might like to try the little brother to your own bike, BMW's 650 GS. This is slightly different in feel to the others because it's a single-cylinder motor as opposed to a V-twin, although power-wise it is on a par with the Transalp, developing around 50 brake horsepower. The 650 GS has been around since the year 2000 and today it enjoys a reputation for being a quality machine. This particular bike is brand new and comes complete with heated grips, a dark windscreen and some smart-looking Remus cans, which are actually road legal. It also has ABS. It is stretching your budget though, Lorraine. Should you be tempted, you'll need to part with £6,000.
Well, thanks for that, Richard. So, Lorraine, you're all kitted up and raring to go on the Transalp. So, off you go and enjoy yourself. So, while Lorraine's off playing on the Transalp, here's Richard with this week's used bike review.
You know, you are ugly, but I kinda like you. Seriously, I mean, what do you say? The Caponord Raptor, styled of course after the lead character from the Alien movies. And no, I don't mean the 6-foot-tall bird with the dark hair, I mean the alien. It is from the tip of its pointy nose to the tip of its equally pointy tail, unlike anything else on the road. But you might think that in choosing to buy one, you are buying into something seriously exotic, more exotic than Kylie's knicker drawer even, but you're not actually. Because underneath this bizarre plastic cladding and styling, there lurks, well, some rather humdrum workaday engines. There are two versions of Raptor, one with a 600cc unit and this one, which uses the mighty V-twin from Suzuki's TL1000. And it's that engine that explains why there are two reasons why people will stare at you when you're riding this bike. Number one, well, obviously, just the look of the thing. Number two, try this. There is a big and growing market for bikes like this. Bikes that are easy to ride around town, comfortable with an almost old-fashioned sit-up and beg riding position. Think of Yamaha's Phaser or even the Suzuki Bandit. Then make them look, well, a bit like this. Different anyway. To ride, it's certainly not challenging. That engine is absolutely throbbing with power. From about 2 RPM, it'll just wrench your arms out of the sockets. You don't need the rev counter. You can count them. 1, 2, 3. I would love to be able to tell you what the Caponord Raptor is for, but I can't. I mean, clearly it's not a custom for cruising on. It's certainly not an off-road bike, but then neither is it particularly an on-road bike either. I certainly wouldn't use it for backlane scratching, and I've no plans to take one touring in the near future either. But then some people love to defy categorisation. They love to avoid being bunged into a pigeonhole. So maybe the Caponord, if it's anything, is one of those people. Hang on, I've just pigeonholed it. Interestingly, it's not the rather bizarre looks that give the bike its character. It is that engine, the mighty V-twin. The sound of it bouncing off walls and cars around you, turning heads before they've even seen what it looks like. It is actually a hoot to ride, just not too fast. If you wanted everything compartmentalised, categorised and perfectly predictable, then you wouldn't be riding bikes. So I'm not about to criticise anyone who's individual enough to want to throw a leg over a bike that looks like it's just dropped out of an alien spacecraft. And if that's you, then as an example, this W plate bike with 6,500 miles on the clock would set you back $4,000. And bear in mind, you do get Italian styling together with Japanese reliability in that Suzuki engine. So maybe you wouldn't be as crazy as all that after all.
Welcome back. Well, Lorraine has returned with the Transalp. What did you think?
I was very impressed with this bike.
Right.
It's so easy to ride. Really good fun factor with this bike. Heated hand grips is great.
Yes.
Especially for the winter, if you're going to be out in the winter.
Yeah, you don't need them so much today, do you? But
No, not today, luckily enough.
Now, it looks quite a big bike. Did it feel big?
Nope, it felt really light. It was so easy to manoeuvre. I couldn't really find fault with it. There was no vibration through the mirrors,
Right.
which usually you do get in a trail bike. Overall, a really nice bike.
Any faults at all?
The one fault, from my own personal thoughts, are the colour.
Right.
I don't think it does the bike justice.
Right. Do you feel it might date?
Yes, I would.
Yeah, I can see your point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, handling, braking?
Handling was great. No problems at all going round bends. It hugged the bends well. Braking, nice brakes, not too sharp. You just eased into it, no problem at all. I couldn't really find much fault bar the colour.
Well, that's
I wouldn't
good.
choose that.
That's good. So we're happy with the Transalp then. And I'm
Yes,
going to move you on to the Aprilia Caponord now. 1,000 cc's, big chunky bike, I think. Not going to be dissimilar to yours,
No.
I bet. But if you want to hop on board
Yeah.
and have a good time and let us know what you think.
I will do,
Okay.
thank you.
And while Lorraine does that, we're over to Gary, who's in his workshop.
When it comes to replacing your chain, you might not know what size it is, so how can you tell? Well, there is one easy way of deciding what size your chain is. You have to measure the pitch, which is the distance between the two pins, and you also have to measure the width, which is how wide it is. So if you take a look at this chain here, there is no markings on it whatsoever. So all we do is we measure from the centre of that pin to the centre of that pin. That will tell us the width. Measure it in 1/8 of an inch. For those of you who remember, that's the old system. And that tells us it's 5/8 of an inch. So well, that will be a 5 pitch. So if you look at the chain, it will say 525, 530, 520. So the first 5 of the number is the pitch of the chain. 5/8 of an inch. So if we can write that down, we know that it's a 5 something or other. To get the next part of it, you need to measure the width of the chain. Now there's usually 2 numbers. It may say 525, it may say 530. What we're going to do now is measure the distance in between there and there, which gives you the width of the chains. Again, this one is now in 1/16 of an inch, so we'll measure that, and it's exactly 5/16 of an inch. Now 5/16 equates to a 525 chain. If it's over 5/16 in width, it would be a 530 chain. If it's less than 5/16 in width, it will be a 520 or a 522 chain. And it's as simple as that. If the distance between those 2 pins was 4/8 or half an inch, then it would be a 4 series chain. Likewise, if the distance was 6/8 or 3/4 of an inch, it would be a 6 series chain. So there we go, chains all sorted out. Here's another tip for you. Replacing a bearing. Now this could be a wheel bearing, it could be a steering head bearing, whatever. You'll know that to expand something, you put it in the oven. So basically, if you wanted to put a bearing into a hub, say, and the hub would fit in the oven, you could put it in, warm it up, put the bearing in. But it's not always convenient, especially if you do maybe a head bearing. You can't put the actual frame into the oven to warm it up. So what you can do is take the bearing, put it in the freezer overnight. That will then contract, but make it slightly easier to press in.
Well, thanks for that, Gary. Good advice as usual. Well, we're going to take a break now, but join us in part 2 when Lorraine will be back with the Caponord and we'll be setting her off on the BMW. See you then. Welcome back to Used Bike Heaven. Now, if you were with us before the break, you'll know that we sent Lorraine out on the Transalp. She liked that, no complaints whatsoever. And the Caponord. So Lorraine, you're back with the Caponord. What did you think?
Well, to look at this bike, it's lovely. It looks as if it would be a really good fun bike to ride.
Yep.
Sadly, I was disappointed in it.
I knew there was a but in there.
Yeah, there's definitely.
So what didn't you like?
Well, basically, I felt the bike was missing something.
Right.
I can't put my finger on what it was, but it wasn't what I would have expected of that type of bike.
Right. Because it's a big bike, isn't it? I mean, it's 1,000cc for starters, so it's bigger than the other 2. So power-wise,
it was responsive. It was
Yeah.
very responsive, and it was nice on the roads. But I felt there wasn't enough there.
right.
There just wasn't enough there.
Right.
And this was very distracting.
Yeah, this is not the most attractive feature, is it, on this bike? But you were distracted by it, were you?
Yes, I'm very distracted by it. It's big, it's clumsy. It just doesn't appear to do anything for the rest of the bike.
It's actually, to me, it looks like a car dashboard.
Yeah, it does.
An old-fashioned car dashboard
Yeah,
at that, which you
uh-huh.
don't expect with Italian
No.
machinery, really, do you?
No.
So, did you build quality?
Well, again, I was disappointed with it.
Right.
I didn't feel it was put together well enough.
Right.
Little rattles here, just not complete, not
Right.
not compact is
Right.
the word I'd maybe use.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's not so much of a winner.
No, it's not, sadly. No.
Maybe the BMW will be.
Yeah.
Because I personally think this, if I was going to go out and buy a bike tomorrow, I would buy this one. Because I think it's
Yeah.
a fabulous bike. A little bit more, in my mind, girly than the other 2. But I'd like to see what you think. Right, Lorraine, the keys are in it. Go on off and enjoy yourself.
I will do.
And while Lorraine's off enjoying herself on her 3rd and final test, we're over to Dickie, who's got some hints and tips if you're thinking of dabbling in the used bike market.
If you are lucky enough to be buying a used bike that's only 6 months, a year old, it's all too easy to assume it's just a case of pick the right colour as you would a new bike and pay your money. Don't. Could be making a mistake. Even in just a few hundred or few thousand miles, things can go wrong just because of neglect or problems with the bike. So here's a reminder of a few quick checks you should be making even on a nearly new bike. In from the front, brakes. At 6 months, yeah, probably not a lot to worry about. At a year, get towards 2 years, you want to be looking a bit more carefully. Towards 2 years, the rubber hoses going down to the brake calipers could be getting towards the end, as could the pads. Check the discs as well, particularly if it's had race pads fitted, because they can wear them out more quickly and they can get warped. Easy to check. When you're test riding it, grab a handful of front brake. If it vibrates through your hand, it's warped. Doesn't matter if it's a year, 6 months or 6 days old, it could still have been crashed, and if it has, you want to know. Now, we've been through most of the checks for these before on the programme, but a quick reminder of things to look for. Bar ends, lever ends, if they're scuffed, it could have been down the road. Check very carefully on the brackets that support the fairings, both where they join the fairing themselves and at the frame. If there's any evidence of rust or cracked or peeling paint, it's been repaired, it's been stuffed. And then we get to the oily bits, the engine. Well, at these kind of ages, it should look pretty much brand spankers. Have a look at the casings where you can see them and check for scuffs and marks and cracks, because it might have been crashed if they're there. At this point as well, if you can, check the oil and coolant levels, more than anything else, because they'll be a good indicator as how the current owner has looked after the thing. If they've neglected it, you don't really want it. Start it. Let it run for a bit. Once it's warmed up, there shouldn't be any smoke coming out of anywhere, and just listen for anything that sounds a bit unusual. Unusual is probably bad at this point. Let it run for a while, let it warm up. Make sure the temperature gauge works, make sure the fan cuts in when it's supposed to. I know most of this is pretty obvious stuff. I'm just trying to make the point that these are checks you need to carry out even on a still relatively new bike. If it's 2 years old, it could already have done, what, 10,000 miles, so your shocks could be on the way out. So could the chain. Well, there's 150 quid for chain and sprockets, 250 quid for a set of tyres. Check your consumables. You'd be surprised how quickly things can wear out. And finally, most nearly new bikes have probably got an alarm. For a lot of us, we've got to have one fitted for the purpose of insurance. If it has, make sure it's Cat 1. It's going to have to be that to satisfy the insurance criteria. Make sure the owner has the original instructions and check the wiring, because any problems with alarms can be more trouble than they're worth. Also make sure they've still got both blippers, in case you lose one. Good luck.
Well, Lorraine is back with the BMW. Lorraine, your third and final test, what did you think?
Well, this bike is really, really impressive.
Right.
Very well put together. I love the dashboard.
Yeah.
The dashboard is really compact, very pleasing to the eye.
It's very modern looking as well,
Very.
isn't it?
The only one thing I would suggest on this, that they should put maybe your fuel gauge.
Right.
Because you don't have that. But
Yeah.
bar that, that's really, really nice.
So all they have is a fuel warning light,
Yeah,
don't
that's
they? Yeah.
all.
Yeah. What did you think of the black screen? Because that to me is a little bit, you know, does it obstruct you at all?
Well, it did catch the eye,
Yeah.
and it would have been better with a smoke screen.
Right.
Or even a clear screen.
Yeah.
I feel it's a bit
It's
too
the
much.
image thing,
Yeah,
isn't it? That's
it's a
the
bit
thing.
too
Yeah.
much for the bike.
Yeah. Now,
Um,
image-wise,
Well, image-wise, this is what I would go for.
Yeah.
A black, sleek bike. It won't date.
mm,
It's going to keep its looks.
it looks quite mean, doesn't it?
It really does look mean.
Now it's weight-wise, because it does look compact and sleek. But weight-wise, what was it like compared to the others?
Well, with this one, BMW are renowned for being relatively heavy with their bikes. It is heavy, but it's not too heavy.
Right.
An ideal bike for a lady rider.
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks quite, I did say it looks girly to me. So now this is 6,000, this stretches your budget to its limit. Does that make a big difference to you?
No, I would maintain this is good value for money.
Right, it's good build quality, isn't it, which was something that was lacking
Yeah.
in the Aprilia. A brief roundup then. The Transalp, if you can remember that far back, good points.
Transalp, very easy to ride, nice riding position. This bike, I feel the Transalp would be very good for someone who's just recently passed their test.
Right.
It's very forgiving.
Negative points?
The colour.
You didn't like
I
that,
just
did you?
don't like the colour.
So a nice sleek black Transalp would be good,
That'd
yeah.
be perfect.
The Caponord,
Ah dear. Well, sadly,
the
just-
booby prize.
It wasn't there for me. I did personally expect to prefer this bike.
Yes,
Looking at it when I first did, I thought I'm going to love this bike,
yeah.
but it wasn't there for me.
Not at all. Any good points?
Nice handling.
Right.
Nice handling. It goes, it's responsive,
Yep.
but for a long-term bike, I wouldn't buy that.
No.
I wouldn't buy that.
And we know what you think to the BMW, we've just covered it. So we're going to need to know, have you decided?
Yeah.
Oh, don't tell me, because before you do, we're going to go to Richard, who's going to give us a little recap.
Well, Lorraine, will you choose Honda's trusty Transalp at £4,000? You said it was a fun bike to ride, and it certainly has enough power for most real-world situations. You weren't too keen on the colour though, but it is the cheapest of this week's trio. Or will you pay £4,500 for Aprilia's ETV 1000, the Caponord? We get the impression it didn't exactly set your world on fire, and the dashboard reminded you of an old car. But it is Italian, so there should be some style in there somewhere. Or maybe you'll remain faithful to BMW and bust your budget by taking the 650 GS at £6,000. You did appear to be more relaxed on this, the baby Beamer, and as you rightly said, because it's black, it shouldn't date too quickly. And of course, to tempt you further, there are all those fitted extras. Lorraine, the choice is yours.
So Lorraine, you heard Richard with the recap. Which one's it going to be?
It has to be the BMW.
Fantastic. Why, briefly?
Well, basically, I consider it really good value for money. It's well put together.
Yeah.
It's really fun to ride.
Yeah.
It's just basically everything I'm looking in a motorbike.
Brilliant. Absolutely great. Well, thank you very much, Lorraine. I'm glad we were able to help you out. And I did actually say that I would buy this bike, so that just goes to show the great minds think alike. Well, that's it for this week. Join us next week for some more Used Bike Heaven.
On Used Bike Heaven next week, we'll be meeting Billy Beaumont from Bristol, who's on the search for something slightly more sporty than his 600 Hornet. Plus another used bike test and more workshop tips from Gary.